Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Hope everyone had a healthy, safe, happy holiday season. I know the new year brings new hopes, new ambitions, new wants, new dreams, all of that stuff we will be talking about today. I know myself, every new year I hope, I wish, and I rejuvenate and re-energize around the idea of how do we make the lives of working people better? How do we move policy that's going to make all our lives just a touch better? How are we going to help those kids that grew up kind of like I did achieve success, achieve their American dream? And how do we use policy to do this? I know I have some of my free market friends who go, no, the invisible hand. And yeah, the invisible hand that's been giving us, well, the invisible fist for quite some time. Kind of a problem. And again, you look at this and you go, there's so much that needs to be done policy-wise, so much that we need to be working on. And it starts with democracy, pushing the small d democratic process. We the people coming together. And I'll tell you, over the break, one of the things that really was quite stunning, shocking, one of those things that I spent most of my time thinking about was this article written by a Canadian scholar. This Thomas Homer Dixon is his name. He's the executive director of the Cascade Institute at the Royal Roads University. And, he's saying what, well, a lot of us have been saying for a while. We're heading down a very dangerous path. We're heading into a weird spot where the democracy that we grew up believing possible, the country that we grew up believing that we were, the citizens that we thought we were, we're not. And he wrote this piece to the Canadian government saying, hey, wake up to the reality that those folks on your southern border could very soon be turning into an authoritative, right-wing kind of dictatorship. And this is, again, one of those things that I've been saying for a while now. Be very careful of what happens in these next couple of months, which is why I think what Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger are doing, extremely important. There are a couple Republicans left who are going to step forward and go, maybe what happened on January 6th was a bad thing. Maybe we should be holding those people accountable. I wish they would take it a step further and say this has been the path that the Republican Party has been on for decades, that all of this was predictable, that all of this was heading to this moment of overthrowing the institutions that built the most prosperous working class in the history of civilization. And that is a strong government that protected people's rights. We're in this weird moment right now. And as he says, by 2025, American democracy could collapse, causing extreme domestic political instability, including widespread civil violence. By 2030, he says, if not sooner, the country could be governed by a right-wing dictatorship. And you go, no, that could never happen here. Never happen here. We're now going through a moment. And this is the weird thing. We're now seeing what the past administration was planning. We're now seeing their treason being laid out in front of us. You're now seeing the coup on paper. They wrote it out in a number of places. This is not new. They had PowerPoint presentations. They had numerous people who were pushing for this. And the weird thing is you look at what happened on January 6th, almost a year ago, and you go, clear as day, there was violence in the Capitol. It was the administration that was pushing for it. That this was all planned. Steve Bannon saying, "Oh, hell's going to break loose." And all of the big lies going on as they're going through Ohio, through Pennsylvania, as they're going through Arizona, Wisconsin, Georgia. And the weird thing is 62% of the country, and this is a hopeful moment for me. 62% of the country saying that Trump shouldn't run again. And that's a huge thing. But you look at the number of people who think that what happened on January 6th was a patriotic thing. I saw a poll that said, 78% of the people that they polled said Trump had little or nothing to do with what happened. There's a disconnect between where the leadership was taking us, and I'm hoping Republicans wake up to this. I know right now the litmus test is do you support the big lie theory? Do you support the Trumpian lie theory? And that's the litmus test to being a Republican today. I'm hoping they wake up over the next several weeks with what hopefully will be coming out about what happened. Now, I fear that we've waited too long. I fear the Democrats were too slow in rolling this out, that the right-wing spin machine has done its magic and has convinced a generation of people that, it was like a walk in the park. It was a peaceful day. But I go back to this Thomas Homer Dixon's piece. And he's saying, look, it's not just him saying this. There are military people in this country fearing potential civil war. And there are polls out there that a number of voters think that inevitably it's going to have to come to that we can't possibly talk to each other, that we're going to have to start shooting. Now, what this guy goes through, and in a very articulate way, in a very methodical way, he goes, look, this has all happened by design. And I go, this has been the conservative movement from William F. Buckley in the 50s all the way through the Powell Doctrine, all the way through the Powell Memo, all the way through voodoo, supply side voodoo Reaganomics. All of this stuff was plotted out to swing the power and influence of this country away from we the people into the hands of the moneyed interest and the very wealthy. And this is the weird thing. And this is where I have some hope that conservatives, true conservatives, not these outrage candy right-wing talk radio listeners, but actual conservatives look at what's going on and go, no, this isn't the America we want. We don't want an oligarchy. We don't want a right-wing authoritarian dictatorship. We don't want King Trump or any of the long line of wannabes. And there's tons of them. There are tons of wannabes. But I look at this guy's article, and I highly suggest, we're going to get it out on social media so people can take a look at it. He's telling the people of Canada, you better prepare. You better prepare for crazy. And he goes through how it happened. He goes through how, because of the horrible policies that were moved by the Reagan era, by the neoliberals, by the ultra-conservatives, this pendulum swing of wealth redistribution from the working class to our 1% has caused this kind of instability. The fact that we haven't dealt with income inequality, the fact that we haven't dealt with any of the issues that working class people have faced. And what it did is it gave the Limbaughs of the world an opportunity to go, see, the reason your life isn't what you believed it was going to be, those people had the opportunity to go, it's the immigrants, it's the gays, it's them, it's these, it's that. So not you. No, you're the best, you're the brightest, you're a good, God-fearing American. It's the other. Without understanding that, our country has been a country of others. All of us. But when you have this kind of constant messaging, this kind of constant pounding, that they're bad, and you combine this with an education system that has, well, been privatized and profitized and moved toward not educating good, thoughtful, critical thinking citizens, but little worker bees, just smart enough to push buttons, just smart enough to move papers around, just smart enough to plug something in, and not smart enough to ask why. Why is this the way it is? It's almost like, well, they planned this. And I argue they did. This was the plan all along. Divide and conquer. I can easily pay half the working class to murder the other half. Jay Gould on steroids. And this is where we're at. The big moneyed interests have done all they can do to keep stealing from working people while blaming, well, all of the others. And the numbers don't lie. This is where economics matters. The numbers don't lie. The wealth class of this country has gotten bigger and larger, and our policies have enriched them even wilder than they could have imagined. While the people who have went and punched a clock, did what they were told, you work your 40 hours, you put the blood, sweat, and tears in, you're going to do okay. You work hard, you play by the rules, you get ahead. That's not true anymore. And that's why I think we've seen all of the labor unrest. We're a country in chaos right now. And it's finally that working people have said enough is enough, that I'm not just happy to have a job anymore, that I actually want to be able to support my children. I actually want to put a roof over their head. And that's a good thing. That's healthy. Now, the weird thing is, and this is where I get arguments from my friends on the right who go, but Rick, it's both the right and the left. The left's just as bad. No. You didn't see the left try and overthrow our government. You didn't see the left try and stop the certification of an election. You didn't see the left write up a proposal on how to overthrow an election in a coup attempt. And we certainly didn't see the left doing the things that corporate America has gotten away with. Fundamentally, we're in a weird spot. But I do have hope. I have hope in we the people. I have hope in what's left of our institutions. The reason we didn't have a coup on January 6th is there were military leaders who weren't going to let it happen. The reason it didn't go forward is there were things in place that said no. There are still shreds of institutions left that are going to hold people accountable. And I look at the fact that, today you've got the New York Attorney General's office that subpoenaed Ivanka and Dumb Jr. To testify as part of their civil investigation into the Trump organization. That's a good thing. No, I want them to say, no, we're not going to participate. I want them to go the route that they think they're going to be able to go. But ultimately, our institutions are going to have to hold them accountable. For instance, Liz Cheney, and I brought her up a moment ago, evidently told ABC that Ivanka had asked her father to intervene, call off the supporters, call off the people ransacking the Capitol. Should she be compelled to come in and testify and say that? Evidently, at least twice. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we wake up to what's been tearing us apart. I'm hopeful that we can organize around making a better tomorrow for ourselves and our kids, and that we can do the things that need to be done to salvage what is our democracy. That is not a good thing. So lots to get to, lots to talk about today. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Are you as concerned as I am on the front that there could be a real problem with our fundamental institutions, that we could see the last true election. I had this conversation over the break, and this real quick. I had this conversation over the break with someone who, neither Republican nor Democrat, just somebody who I view as straight down the middle, saying the concerns that he had were that people tinkering with the ballot box, tinkering with the vote, figuring out in some of these Republican states especially how to block people's access to the ballot box, how to stop people from voting. That was his biggest concern. He was of the mindset, and I don't know that I disagree, but he was of the mindset that if people, you and me, we the people, have access to the ballot box, if we vote, and if this becomes something that enough of us stand up, step forward, and speak out and say, hey, we definitely need this, does all this other stuff go away? And his concern was, if Republicans win the day, if they're able to stop people from voting, that this will be the last fair election that we ever have. Outside of all the big lie, outside of all the chaos that we see from Donald Trump and all of the minions, that if we the people don't have access to the ballot box, if they're successful at blocking that, which is why Schumer had better do something to pass some voting rights legislation. He was seriously concerned as an independent. I'm someone who believes everyone should vote as a matter of your basic citizenship. Every person should vote. But you see all the things on the other side, all of the attempts to limit that. It's frightening, not just to me, but to someone I view as fairly centrist. But I have hope. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. When we come back, Philly Inquirer columnist Will Bunch going to be here to share some thoughts on his latest articles. Stick around. Right back after this.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. That was the day local AFL and CIO unions in Stamford, Connecticut, joined forces to bring out 20,000 members from 30 trade unions in a massive one-day general strike to support striking machinists at Yale and Town Lock. The machinists had been out on strike since November, demanding a 30% wage increase and a union shop. The combined Stamford labor organizations had promised action if Governor Raymond Baldwin did not withdraw state police from interfering with peaceful picketing. The state police were being used to attack the picket lines, arrest strikers, and escort scabs into the plant. In a last-minute attempt to avert the general strike, Yale and Town President W. Gibson Carey Jr. offered an 18% raise, but refused any talk of a closed shop. So the unions went on an extended lunch hour, effectively bringing the entire city to a standstill. Numerous small businesses closed their shops and joined in support. Marchers converged upon Town Hall from 5 directions. Their placards read, "Stamford is a union town. Let's keep it, and we will not yield victory." Workers represented unions like the Mine Mill, the American Federation of Musicians, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the Barbers Union, Bookbinders, Gas and Chemical, and United Steelworkers, among many others. World War II veterans carried a banner that read, "We licked the Axis, and we can beat Kerry." Despite public support, pitched battles continued on the picket lines. The company would not budge until April, when they finally accepted the proposal the machinists had demanded back in January. The machinists quickly ratified the contract. They beat back a union-busting offensive and built local solidarity among unions at a time when the AFL and CIO were very much at odds.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So over half, I mean, this is the amazing thing here, over half of Republicans in the most recent ABC Ipsos poll that was released on Sunday, 52% said that they believed that the rioters were protecting American democracy. And as I said, I'm concerned about the future of our democratic process. I'm concerned about the future of, well, what I think most of us take for granted, considering that half of the country sees what happened on January 6th as, well, patriots protecting democracy. Scary, scary stuff. And here to share some thoughts, I've asked Will Bunch to come talk with us. Will is a national columnist for the Philly Daily News. Will, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
So what do you make of this when you get, this latest poll? And I know a lot of these polls are, there's a lot to them, but just the fact that over half, 52% in this poll are saying, no, they were protecting democracy. Well,
yeah, it's interesting because I've seen a lot of polls, maybe not on this exact issue, but polls on similar issues, about what Trump did, about the threat to democracy, about January 6th, particularly about the whole big lie, that the election was stolen, that somehow Biden's victory was fraudulent. And seems like pretty much for the last year since January 6th, we've seen this steady rate of 50 to 60% of Republicans holding this completely wackadoodle, viewpoint that the election was stolen, that they call them the J6 Patriots were trying to save the democracy by storming Capitol Hill and impaling Capitol police officers with flagpoles and whatnot. And I think at some point we have to stop being surprised at poll numbers like this, because we've just seen them now again and again and again. And what it does is it gives us a clear, it gives us a clear picture of how many of our citizens have just gone off the deep end. So if it's 50 or 60% of Republicans, you're talking about, 75 million people voted for Trump. I don't know. You're talking about like 50 million Americans, right? That's a rough ballpark guess, 40, 50 million Americans.
I mean, the number's huge.
Yeah.
And when I look at this, there's part of me, Will, that goes, are these people reachable? And in the coming weeks, as we hear more coming out about the investigation, the committee's investigation and the hearings that are going to happen, at this point, are these people even reachable? Or have the Democrats waited so long to lay this stuff out that people are already in their camps?
Well, you make a good point. I think I wish the Democrats had started this committee sooner, taken more opportunities to have more public hearings to kind of get the basic story of January 6th out there. But I think fundamentally, no matter what the Democrats had done, many of these people would be unreachable because I grew up a total Watergate geek in the 1970s. I was 13 in 1972 when the Watergate break-in occurred, and those next couple summers when I was 13, 14 years old, I was one of those weirdo kids who raced home from summer camp to watch John Dean testify in the hearings. And so I remember that time, and you have to understand, I mean, the news media environment was just so much different back then. I mean, people got their news from their local newspaper, which was, had AP stories and whatnot, and from the television newscasts at night, the three networks, CBS, NBC, and ABC. And, as the truth about Richard Nixon's Watergate came out, and the obvious crimes that were committed there, that was what was being presented to the American people. That there was criminal activity. In other words, there was no Fox News in 1973. There was nobody going on the air every night that was watched by, 5 or 10 million people every night, giving the story of why Richard Nixon was innocent and this was all a frame up and the Democrats were just out to get him. That didn't exist back
Oh, that's
then.
a good point.
And it exists now. And I mean, you have people out here who want to believe a story about what feels like the truth to them. And I've spent the last year and a half really kind of trying to take a deep dive into, rather than just being shocked at how angry and resentful some Americans are. I've kind of tried to get to the bottom of why they're so resentful, and I've focused a lot on the whole issue of education, particularly higher education, because I think if you go back in the big sweep of modern history, going all the way back to World War II, I think that's been the big change. At the start of World War II, it's kind of hard to believe, but only 5% of American adults had college degrees. Today, the figure's maybe not as high as people might think it is. It's 37%, but that's still a huge change from 5%, and which has been great for some people in a way. People have had learning opportunities they didn't have 100 years ago. But we've also taken higher education, and we had a chance back then to make it a public good, and instead we privatized it. We priced it out of the reach of most American families unless they took usurious student loans, and made it just pretty much inaccessible to wide swaths of America. And I think that really set up the template for this resentment of certain kinds of elites. I mean, you look at the right wing and who they really hate. It's not millionaires and billionaires. It's not the people who are outsourcing their jobs to China. It's not the people who crushed their labor unions, which were once such a source of support in these communities. It's not those people. It's people like college professors. It's people like journalists, like us. It's Hollywood movie stars and actors. It's people that they think are looking down on them. And I mean, the reality is more complicated than that. But so these this resentment has caused them to completely distrust, for example, the news media. And so when the news media reports that the 2020 election was fair and honest, or when the news media tries to report how vaccines were tested and developed, and it's all a big story that these elites are trying to tell you. And these people are just teed up for somebody to come along. I think there was always a fear that a demagogue like Donald Trump could come along and rile up these popular resentments. I think what people didn't anticipate was that there would be an entire First Amendment protected, media enterprise that would support this, that there'd be something like Fox News, that there'd be something like right-wing talk radio and Sean Hannity and all those folks that are still out there.
Or that they would have the power that they have. I mean, these are powerful
Right.
institutions at this point because they're well funded by the billionaires, the same people who have taken those jobs away. It's an interesting cycle if you think about it, that the Jay Goulds of this era, the ones who said I could pay half the working class to murder the other half, are the ones funding the same kind of things that are going on today, only we don't see it in the same ways that we did in the past.
Right. It's more sophisticated, I guess. And, it is sophisticated. I'm pretty sure that in all the times that you and I have talked, Rick, I'm sure at one point we probably talked about the Powell memo from 1971, in which Lewis Powell, who became a Supreme Court justice, working on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, basically, the millionaire and billionaire, I guess they were millionaires back then, but now billionaire protectors of capitalism. These people felt very threatened. They felt very threatened by the surge in people going to publicly funded state universities that had low tuition, because the more that people got a liberal education, and that term doesn't mean liberal in the political sense, but it means a general sweeping education of how the world works, philosophy, sociology, political science, all of those things. The more that people got that kind of education back in the 60s and 70s, the more dissatisfied they became with the system. And so, you saw this effort to shut this down. And the piece I wrote over the weekend, when you asked me to come on the show, I mean, I wrote a piece, and actually I focused a lot on K through 12 education because
Right.
there's a big court case in Pennsylvania right now about how unfair the K through 12 education funding system is in Pennsylvania, and how
and you stepped right on my segue right into that.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I stole your segue. Well, I'm sure you would do it better than me, so you can do it if you
No,
want.
this is where I was going next because we talk about all these lost opportunities, and one of the things that came out of the hearing in Pennsylvania here was this attorney who asked this question. That over the break, I had spent a lot of time going, this is what they've always believed, and this attorney, John Krill, he was questioning this superintendent from a very rural school, and he simply asked, what use would a carpenter have for biology? What use would someone on the McDonald's career track have for Algebra 1? And that's always been the elite view of working class children. I mean, back in the 1880s, there was a wealthy guy who said, I've seen children spoiled for work because of too much education. They're not going to want to go into the mines and the factories and work the long hours and the brutishly short lives. This is who they've always been. So I wasn't surprised when the question was asked.
Yeah, I mean, John Krill is the classic example of saying the quiet part out loud. For a while, I think Republicans have gotten pretty good about keeping the quiet part quiet, even though many of us knew what was going on. But here he is in court admitting that they think that some kids should be on the McDonald's track, and they want to create a system of education in which they create people who learn just enough to do working class jobs, but don't learn too much to question the whole system. And unfortunately, I think they've done pretty well in that mission. They have. When you look at the system that we've had the last generation or so, all the effort's been on drilling and testing kids in a couple of areas, reading and mathematics, and completely losing subjects that are really, excuse me, that are really just so important in our modern world. Science, biology and science was focused on in this court case, but the one that I think is huge that went unmentioned is civics. Civics, you call it by whatever name you want to, but learning about
basic high school government. Now I've been talking about this for years. I mean, the fact that you didn't have the same kind of, my kids didn't have the same kind of classes that I had. I had a couple, I think 3 government or civics or classes along those lines to help you become active, engaged, thoughtful citizens and participating in democracy and voting and all of those things that my kids unfortunately didn't get.
Yeah, I mean, this whole concept that one of the reasons that you go to school and get an education is so you can become a citizen someday, so you can take part in the voting process and learn how to be an informed voter. I mean, this was something that leaders, used to believe in 75 years ago, and it just totally dropped from the conversation altogether. And
because we need worker bees, Will. We don't need critical thinkers. We need worker bees. We need people, as George Carlin used to say, just smart enough to run the machines and do the work, but not smart enough to ask why they're getting screwed over.
Exactly. And the less you understand about how the system is supposed to work, and the less you understand about civics and government, it just stands to reason that the more susceptible you're going to be to the big lie. I wrote a couple pieces in the last couple days about January 6th, so of course I'm starting to get some pushback on social media from various trolls, and the things that they're saying to me are just so illogical about how Biden wasn't elected with the proper constitutional process, or what. I mean, these people obviously don't know what the proper constitutional process is, and I always want to be careful in this. I mean, I'm not, there's a certain worldview that, like, oh, these people are just so dumb, and what they're deplorables and what are we going to do about them. I mean, I think it's more complicated than that. I mean, I think we should acknowledge. I mean, it is unfortunate, and it's a complicated thing. I mean, people are somewhat responsible for their own choices about how much they want to educate themselves. That's true. I mean, I do believe that, but I also believe the system is more important. And if the system isn't giving kids a chance from the start, if it's deciding in fifth grade that Joe over here is on the McDonald's track, but Jack over here is on the is going to work for Elon Musk someday. If we're treating our kids that way, it's going to filter out through society. I mean, if you look at the society we have right now, I mean, to me, the most dominant emotion in our society is resentment.
No, you're absolutely right.
And so that didn't come from nowhere. That came from something. And I wrote this book. It's called Resent You period, like in university. But it looks at the role that higher education has played in causing this resentment. It comes out in August. But it looks at the role higher education has played in causing resentment in our politics, which is the root of our whole political divide, which is the root of January 6th and the big lie and all these other things that have happened. And I mean, my sense is, if you really want to fix these problems, I mean, it's way too messed up now to fix it overnight. But if you want to start to try and fix these problems, you've got to fix education. You've got to be creative. And, I have a whole chapter in my book about majorly expanding to universal national service, where kids at age 18 would, millions of kids would have an opportunity to do a gap year where they could, join with kids from other backgrounds that they wouldn't meet normally and work on projects like climate-related projects or.
Yeah, we definitely need something that's going to pull. We definitely need something that's going to pull the country back together, and I can't wait till the book comes out. But I agree with you, absolutely. Education should be one of the first places we start. And then I would argue we need to have jobs for people that, even if they are on the McDonald's track, that those jobs have dignity, respect of a decent wage, and a future and all that. But Will, I appreciate the time. As always, great stuff. Love the work that you do. We'll get some links out on social media of your most recent articles. As always, great stuff.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Appreciate the time. Our good friend Will Bunch. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Make sure we check out our social media on Twitter @RickSmithShow. You can check out some of Will's articles. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. That was the day the trial against labor leader Tom Mooney began. Mooney stood accused of detonating a bomb at the Preparedness Day parade in San Francisco on July 22, 1916. The military parade was meant to demonstrate U.S. preparedness to enter World War I. Many labor leaders objected to the idea of the United States becoming involved in the war. The bomb in San Francisco killed 10 spectators and injured 40 others. District Attorney Charles Fickert soon charged Mooney, his wife Rena, and his assistant Warren Billing with the crime. Mooney, born in Chicago, was the son of a coal miner. He became an iron molder at the age of 14, where he joined the Union. Known for his socialist politics, Mooney was involved in a long, bitter strike against the Pacific Gas and Electric Company in 1913 that spanned well into 1914. He was accused of trying to use dynamite during that strike, but was acquitted. After the explosion at the San Francisco parade, Martin Swanson, a private detective with the Pacific Gas and Electric Company, pointed the district attorney toward Mooney. There was no evidence tying Billings or Mooney to the explosion. During the trial, some who testified against Mooney even admitted to committing perjury on the stand. Despite all of this, the men were convicted. Billings received life in prison, while Mooney was sentenced to hang. The trial garnered international outrage. President Woodrow Wilson set up a commission to study the case. Mooney's sentence was commuted to life in prison. For 2 decades, a fight was waged to release Mooney. Finally, the evidence of false testimony piled so high it could not be ignored. And in 1939, Billings and Mooney were released from prison. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So over the weekend, I got to look at Rand Paul's tweet, and you got to love Rand Paul. Always something ludicrous. He tweeted out an American Conservative article that I found interesting. They were talking about Wisconsin and how Democrats stole the election. They stole the election by going out and convincing voters that, hey, you should vote for our ideas. They went out and they registered voters. They got people to get their ballots and get them turned in. Somehow in conservative land, in American conservative world, that is what they consider stealing an election. What I would call good old-fashioned retail politics. Get out there and sell on your ideas. The one who's got the best ideas wins, you're right? The most people who get to the polls and cast their ballot wins. Yeah, evidently to conservatives, that's a theft of an election. Wow. But I'll tell you, I'm happy that Chuck Schumer is going to be moving forward on something with the filibuster, hopefully, so we can get some voting rights stuff done so that everyone has the chance to vote. And here to share some thoughts on, well, did they steal Wisconsin by convincing voters that you should vote for us? I don't think so, but here to share some thoughts on that, I've asked our good friend Jeff Hauser to come talk with us. Jeff is the executive director of the Revolving Door Project at the Center for Economic Policy Research. Jeff, thanks for taking time for us.
Love to be here.
So walk me through your thoughts on this. Rand Paul seems to think that this is theft. The American Conservative magazine, this is theft. How dare they go out and convince people that their ideas are good and that they should get a ballot and they should return it? How dare they?
I mean, this is the story of the last two generations of the Republican Party. The story becomes purer and more clear over time, but for the last 50 years, a Democrat as president is seen as fundamentally illegitimate by Republicans. When Jimmy Carter took over, he was dismissed as a fluke. And he was, he did benefit from, being after Richard Nixon and all. But of course, Richard Nixon is the cause of Richard Nixon's demise. And it accelerated with Bill Clinton, who may not be by any means my favorite Democrat, but who clearly won fair and square in 1992, was never treated as such by the establishment in Washington, D.C., especially Republicans, but not limited to Republicans. And they viewed him as illegitimate, and they told crazy conspiracy theories about, drug money in Arkansas and murder rings and the like. And it accelerated, of course, with the first Black president in America's history, Barack Obama. And Donald Trump, has, further made the base crazy. But Rand Paul is also the inheritor of Ron Paul's crazy email, originally physical mail newsletter, gold bug, conspiratorial, right-wing nuttiness. And so that's just more and more what the Republican Party is. But in that worldview, the only way that Democrats can win is to cheat, because it's deemed that they are fundamentally a party. The QAnon conspiracy is taken for granted on the far right. And so how could people want to vote for such a party? There has to have been theft.
Never mind the fact that, they got 7 million more votes in the last election. What was it, 3.5 million in the election before? And, here in Pennsylvania, generally more than a million, there are more than 1 million registered Democrats than there are Republicans. But somehow, going out and trying to get those folks to cast a ballot, somehow that's cheating.
Yeah, I mean, because it's just, they devalue the status of the type of people who vote for Democrats. Obviously, a lot of that surrounds the fact that the Democratic Party is the overwhelming choice of African Americans in this country. Some of it's that they dismiss in all sorts of different ways, be it as LGBTQ or what have you. They just don't count as fully American Democratic voters. They attack unions, you name it. They do not value as fully American the type of people who tend to vote for the Democratic Party. And so that is how you have to come to grasp. I mean, it's got to be hard to support the party that has lost 7 of the last 8 presidential elections by the popular vote. I mean, that's a pretty strong trend. If you lost 7 out of 8 in something else, like if the Philadelphia Eagles lose 7 of 8 games, they want to fire the coach. The Republican Party isn't going to fire their coaches, so they have to claim the game is rigged.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. Now, I look at the story that came out today that Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, is looking to do something on the voting rights. He says by January 17th, if they don't do that, they're looking at possibly changing something with the filibuster. Any thoughts on this?
I mean, I think Schumer recognizes what he is up against, and I think he is doing his best. He has a very weak hand here. He needs 50 out of 50 Senate Democrats on board. Slowly but surely, a lot of the mediocre Senate Democrats, for lack of a better term, have come around on filibuster reform, at least for voting rights related cases. But I mean, has Joe Manchin, has Kirsten Sinema, I am hopeful. I don't know what can be done. I am not sure what either of them want to do in the near future.
Right.
Does Joe Manchin want to run for re-election? I don't know. Does Joe Manchin want to get really rich? Not that he isn't rich already. That might be appealing if he wants to get even richer. I don't know what the right course of action is. I don't know what, without like some really criminal stuff, I don't know what Biden or Schumer can offer that can trump what they Manchin might see on the other end. And
no, excellent point.
Kirsten Sinema, who spent her August recess interning at a private equity or a hedge fund owned winery, like God only knows what her vision of her future is, and is it even running for re-election as a Democrat? So I hope they're doing their best. History, if we still have it in the future, will remember what Manchin and Sinema decide, but I don't have any real sense of what that is going to be.
Now, the weird thing is that Manchin had a voting rights plan that wasn't horrible. I mean, there were some things in there that I thought were good, the things that we need. He says he believed that they were going to get to the cloture vote. They were going to get to the 60 votes with what he had proposed. And and correct me if I'm wrong, he didn't get one Republican to vote for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think like at times Murkowski has said positive things, and like I don't know exactly if she'll vote under the right scenario would provide a vote. But yes, but 1 is certainly not 10, and the path from 1 to 2 is actually like almost unpassable. From 2 to 10 is inconceivable. So yeah, I think Manchin is stuck between the fact that I do think he believes in democracy for reform. I have no idea what Kirsten Sinema believes, so I won't even express an opinion. I think Manchin's probably substantively on the right place, but I think he really is dug in on the filibuster. And no matter how stupid the filibuster is and what a historical anomaly it is, I think we can't assume that everyone is in bad faith. Their arguments might be dumb, but lots of people hold dumb opinions. I do think Manchin believes in this view, and I hope to heck somebody can be persuasive with him.
Yeah, I mean, because on the voting rights part of this, this is one of those things that something really needs to be done, because if not, I think some of my more independent thinking friends who aren't politically on either side are going, this could be the last free and fair election, given the fact that a lot of states have put up major barriers that even my middle of the road friends are uncomfortable with.
Yes, I mean, so there's access to the polls issues, which have gotten steadily worse in the last 10 to 15 years, which is atrocious. That is something that historically had only gotten better over time. I mean, the ballot was only restricted to upper class white men at the founding of the country, and over time it kept expanding, and that was supposed to be the inexorable progress of America, and that's obviously been backsliding. There are other related issues that I think somewhat distinct issues actually about local officials just rejecting election results, and obviously we're all like living in fear that the 2024 election, you could see a Democrat win by as much or more than they did in 2020. and yet a serious effort to steal the results. And I think significant actions in the interim potentially occurring as denialist MAGA Republicans run for all sorts of obscure local offices and get installed increasingly in state offices. I mean, like you look at the people in Georgia, those Republicans who ran the election process, are they good on democracy issues? No, they're terrible. But they're like significantly better than Trump, which is why they stood up to Trump. Like there was a level below which they would not go.
Yeah.
And those people are now being primaried and ridden out of the Republican Party by Trump. So yeah, I am worried about the 2022 elections, and between both the slow degrading of access to the ballot and the difficulty in ensuring that whoever gets the most ballots, even after a restricted access, does the person who get the most votes win? It's hard to know for sure.
Yeah, especially with all the stuff that we're seeing coming out in writing. There are PowerPoints and there are memos and there's all this stuff where they were very open and honest about it. And I guess, this is one of those things when they feel they've got the upper hand and they've got the power to impose their will. They don't try and hide it.
Absolutely. And I think there's long been a belief that Republican elected officials are less crazy than their public-facing rhetoric. And I think like Joe Manchin is one of those people who believes that.
No.
And I think some of this is because Republican electeds code shift. They talk rational-ish, many of them, not all, increasingly fewer, but still many Republicans know how to talk to a person like a Joe Manchin or a Mark Warner or a Chris Coons, and sound not crazy. And I think a lot of Democrats think that is the true person. And so when they're ranting and raving about stolen elections and caravans coming to take over the country from Central America through Mexico, I think they think, oh, that's just them doing the politics. I think increasingly it's the opposite. I think it's that these people genuinely are crazy Looney Tunes people who watch Fox or the even crazier OAN and Newsmax and the like. I think a lot of those people, like those are actually the elected officials now. And that's really, really dangerous.
Yeah, it's all about saying the outside, all the things you were saying inside. All the cloakroom talk that you're whispering, they now shout from the mountaintop, which is scary stuff. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show, or with Jeff Hauser. Jeff's the executive director of the Revolving Door Project at the Center for Economic and Policy Research. The revolvingdoorproject.org is the website. We'll get links out on social media. You can check out some of that. I did want to get some of your thoughts on outside of the voting rights, which I think has to happen. They cannot go into March, April without getting that done. But I think the Build Back Better thing stuff has to come back. I think they need to get something passed through. There's some chatter possibly. What are you hearing in D.C. of the possibility that that's going to make a comeback?
I think we're going to get to a point where something is going to happen. The entire process is artificial actually because of the filibuster. So what happens is that there are essentially 2 reconciliation opportunities a year. And the reconciliation is just a fancy way for economically significant legislation for which you have majority rule in the Senate, as opposed to needing 60 votes. And since basically nothing can get 60 votes, those are the only moving packages. And that really makes legislating very difficult because you need 50 out of 50 Democrats to agree, and you're trying to combine things in which, like Joe Manchin you may be able to get a better bill that Joe Manchin agrees to on some issues than Sinema, and Sinema may be better on some issues than Manchin. And normally you would just break it up and have different votes, and honestly, on some aspects, you might even get a Republican or two. Mitt Romney has an oddly good child tax credit idea. It may not be perfect, but like you might be able to do it if you had a series of 50 vote opportunities.
Right.
It would be a lot easier than trying to squish all these issues together. Like Manchin's a little bit better on taxes than Sinema. Sinema cares a little bit more about the climate than Manchin. So like it is a genuinely difficult thing. I think unfortunately what's going to happen is that Manchin and Sinema are going to have the power that maybe they always had all along, which is they're going to basically look at every idea that Biden believes in, and they're going to say, these are the ones we like, and that's what Build Back Better is going to become. And Build Back Better is going to be, in this scenario, it's going to pass. It's going to be a good bill. It will not be anywhere near what the country needs on a host of different issues. And I think we're just going to have to accept that we need to elect better senators if we want better outcomes.
Ultimately, that's the end of this. We're going to have to elect better people into these positions. But I look at Sinema, and I knew, several years back, I had people telling me, no, she's the gold star of the progressive movement. And I'm going, I don't know her that well to give her that title, but she doesn't look like that to me now.
I mean, I know some people who knew her like way back in the day in terms of like lefty politics. And the sense one gets is that she's just a very strange and super ambitious person. And so she is like seriously shifted from being, in some ways a commendable story, because she definitely grew up much more economic duress than most successful politicians in this country, which obviously is a good thing. And she was a Green Party lefty activist who talked a very strong egalitarian economic message. And she got into the state legislature in Arizona and like started seeing what her path forward could be, and saw that as reaching out to affluent communities. And she has done that extremely successfully. Mark Kelly in Arizona has shown that while maybe it's a tough state so far for like a genuinely seriously progressive Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren Democrat to win at this moment, although maybe they could. I tend to think they could. But Mark Kelly, he's not that, but he's also not Kyrsten Sinema.
Right.
So why Sinema has not moved back to a progressive stance, given that Mark Kelly has shown you can win in Arizona that way, I don't know. But something is in it for her.
Yeah, well, we'll see. And I'm hopeful that we can move both of those pieces of legislation. So come election time, we can move in a better direction. Jeff, I appreciate you taking some time for us, sharing your expertise. Thanks so much. I look forward to talking to you again here in the new year.
Yep, definitely. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. Our good friend Jeff Hauser. Make sure you check out their website at the revolvingdoorproject.org. We'll get links out on social media. I can check that out. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. This date in 1931 was a day that helped to bring the hunger and poverty caused by the Great Depression to the attention of the nation. 500 farmers, black and white, marched on England, Arkansas to demand food for their starving families. A severe drought had destroyed crops in the region, already hit hard by the downturn in the national economy. The march became known as the England Food Riot, even though there were no actual acts of violence during the march by the farmers. Store owners in the town gave some food to the protesters, but real help came when the national media picked up the story. People across the nation read about the farmers in Arkansas and saw pictures of their hunger. They sent help. The story also caught the attention of the famous cowboy and humorist Will Rogers. Rogers had a very popular syndicated newspaper column. He used his column to bring attention to what was happening in Arkansas. Rogers wrote, "You let this country get hungry, and they are going to eat. No matter what happens to budgets, income taxes, or Wall Street values, Washington mustn't forget who rules when it comes to a showdown." Rogers also went on tour to raise funds for drought relief for farmers in the region. One person who was not swayed by the pictures of hungry farmers and their families was United States President Herbert Hoover. President Hoover refused to have the federal government lend aid to the farmers. His refusal to mobilize federal resources to combat the Great Depression helped Franklin Delano Roosevelt win election the following year. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
One 416 Rick 1-866-416-7425. You got a thought, a question, comment, something on your mind? Give us a call. NBC News has said that congratulations, America. We've exceeded 55 million COVID cases since the beginning of the pandemic. 1 million new cases in the last 3 days alone. I find that, wow, just remarkable. Also, a federal judge in Oklahoma ruled that the Oklahoma National Guard, they have to get vaccinated against the virus. Now, you got a governor there who's saying, no, we're going to sue, no. And they tried, didn't work. Now what you have is the head of the Oklahoma National Guard, who last month said, if you don't get it by the end of the year, out the door you go. Now, my favorite story of the day, this is Texas, and you got to love Texas on a certain level. The governor there, Greg Abbott, on Friday had this, had this statement that he beat the Biden administration because a federal judge said that they didn't have to vaccinate. The mandates for masks all shot down. Because this is what Abbott was against. Didn't want vaccine mandates, didn't want masks, didn't want any of that stuff, all shot down. Now asking the federal government to help. The story goes like this at the Hill. Texas Governor Greg Abbott announced Friday that the state has requested federal assistance to help with COVID-19 testing and treatment amid a surge in cases. Abbott, who has been a leading opponent of COVID-19 vaccines, said in a statement that Texas is urging the federal government to step up in this fight and provide resources necessary to help protect Texans. I'm kind of thinking that that's your job, Governor Abbott. Just saying. So let's find out what we got on line one. We've got Jeff. Jeff, how are you, man?
Hi, Rick. I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
I was just curious because at my work there's a lack of PPE and safety precautions when it comes to COVID. What do they do at your work to, prevent health hazards from COVID?
Well, they required that everyone's being vaccinated and that the people have masks.
Okay. Do they also require a treadmill for you being a fat fuck?
Well, what's funny is there's someone who that's the best he can do. The best he can come up with. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate the call. The good thing, Jeff, is nobody heard it. Let's go on to line 3 and find out what George has got to say. George, what's on your mind? All right, I guess George left. I guess George was not thrilled. He wanted to talk about unions, and I was hoping that he actually did. But there you go. But here's the thing, to Jeff's point, and Jeff is who he is, a sad little person who, this is the best he can come up with, and I'm okay with that, Jeff. Our education system has failed you. There still are problems with people getting the PPE that they need. There still are problems with OSHA not protecting workers in the workplace. There are things that we need to be doing, especially in this moment when things are surging. This is the weird space that we're in. When the poorly educated, who the best they can do is lash out, they feel this need to make everyone else miserable. This is the reason things are surging. I look at Texas as the perfect example. Greg Abbott has been a guy who's been against every attempt to get things done. This is a guy who has stood in the way at every single step. And yet now when things are bad, and from what I understand, things are going badly in the state of Texas. He is now going, oh, well, gee, I won. We beat Joe Biden. We won. But now with his hand out going, help me. I need your help. And this is one of those things where, I've told my kids this, and a lot of this comes back down to dealing with children. And I've always told my kids that if they do something stupid, if they get hurt, they ride their bike without a helmet, or they put their hands on something hot on the stove or whatever, I'm going to help you, but you will get no sympathy. And this is one of those things that, again, as parents, we have to figure out how to do. It is what it is. Let's go back to line one. We got George. George, how are you, man?
Hey, Rick, damn, check out those pickles.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it, buddy. Let's dump George. Nobody heard that, George, so better luck next time. So again, like you do with your children, you get them what they need. And look, Joe Biden has to get them what they need. He's got to get some folks in there to help. He's got to get the stuff that they need. But this is one of those moments where you go, I'm sorry, just not going there. What the heck? Well, I guess my latest troll went away. I was really looking forward to something close to intelligent, and I know that's not possible with the trolls. I know that the people who are stuck in their basement, not quite smart enough to make an actual argument, that they just disappeared. William, better luck next time, buddy. Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Now, again, I go back to this. We're in this moment where we're setting record highs for the virus. In fact, they're saying that the Omicron now accounts for like almost 60% of the COVID infections. We're now pushing some huge numbers. I guess daily numbers is what they're saying is daily numbers around 250,000 across the country, which I guess that was last Tuesday, which was a massive record. And I guess William's back. All right, William. All right, go ahead, William.
Smith?
Say what you got to say.
So I've been watching you for about 6 months, man, and I'm concerned.
All right, thanks. Appreciate your concern. Put it in writing. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. By all means, do that. And then, we can go from there. But hey, thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. I love when people care about me. Thank you. Thank you. Love you too. Love you too, Pumpkin. Here's the thing. And this is where the sad reality is. When you deal with live radio, you got morons. And we've got a bunch of them here. And look, I love that. Thank you, morons. It shows that you care. But over the 7-day average of the last week, we've had over 381,000 new cases, averaging about 1,500 deaths. And this is where this gets serious. I know the right loves to say that this is kind of a game that they're going to win, and we're going to drink the libtards' tears, which you're never going to see me cry. Sorry, buddy. This is not about winning and losing for me. It's about life and death. It's about these folks who they're not going to be here. These 1,500 people who have families, they're not coming back. And some of them, sadly, are the kind of trolls who play the games that we've heard here. Some of them are the ones who would deliberately not be vaccinated. And that's frightening. And I'm in this spot where, I think we're gonna have to go through this head first. We're gonna have to go through the train wreck. I don't see any other way. And it goes back to what Will Bunch had said in the last hour, that our education system is so badly failed some, that we've trained so many on the McDonald's path, and we've heard a couple of them here tonight, that there are so many on the McDonald's path, that there's so many that the education system just left them behind. That I don't know that it's going to stop until I guess whatever comes. The numbers are going to get worse, and we know that. And we're going to do what I guess what Churchill said. Americans always do the right thing after doing everything else first. And sadly, it seems like we're having to do everything else first, but in the process, we're blowing out our healthcare system. And I look at Ohio, for instance. Ohio has per capita the highest number of hospitalizations with people with coronavirus. Their ICU beds are just overwhelmed. There's all this stuff going on. And yet, you have still the deniers. You still have the people who are going, don't care, it's not a big deal. And I've always said, look, most people who get it, they're going to probably be fine. They're probably going to get to the other side. There are 1,500 people a day who are dying. And the other ones we don't know about are the people who go to these hospitals. And I was just there recently. I was just at a hospital recently where you go, how long are you waiting to get a bed? Hours? Days? I look at this story in Iowa. This family is saying that their loved one died because, well, guess what? There was no place to put this guy. This Dale Weeks guy who had sepsis, he was diagnosed with sepsis, and they could only find a rural hospital to put him in that didn't have the ability to treat him. And while he's waiting to get into a bigger hospital that could actually treat him better, he died. And again, this is always the concern in my view. Always the concern that we're going to blow out our healthcare system and that we're going to be in a situation where people who have other ailments are going to end up dying. And there are no numbers on this. And that's the thing that's really kind of frustrating. There are no numbers on this and how many other ailments are causing people their lives. It's kind of frustrating, and maybe something we should be looking at. Anyway, let's go back to the phone lines and see what Tim's got to say. What do you got on your mind, Tim?
Well, it kind of has to do with what you're talking about. The Michelle Obama tried helping.
Okay. You knew that was going down a hole fast. Let's go to line 3 with Alice. What's on your mind, Alice? How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I've been better.
Well, you were saying about the numbers. I was reading an article on Washington Post yesterday, I believe it was, or maybe the day before, but they were saying that the accuracy was probably nowhere near because a lot of people were doing the test at home and they weren't turning them in.
Right.
And I thought to myself, yeah, I could have told you that because I know at least 5 people. I'd once told you before, that our little rural county, is one of the lowest vaccination rates. But I know at least 5 local Trump-supporting evangelical COVID deniers that have come down with COVID, and they did the self-test. I was, jeez.
Yeah. No, sadly, we're in a moment where there are a lot of people who are sick. I saw, in Orlando, for instance, there was a line 3 miles long of people trying to get a test because things are getting so out of control. But hey, at least Greg Abbott won, and at least we've got the troll folks who are they've got better things to do.
I know the bad part is they're just giving everybody their little germs.
So is there? Do you see any hope in this? I mean, because I'm looking at the next couple of months and some of the numbers, and in the next segment, I'm going to talk to my resident expert about what he sees coming in the next couple of months. Do you see any hope coming?
To be blunt, no. I believe that we're just going to have to, those of us who are taking precautions are going to have to continue to do them and try and stay away from the worst of the idiots. And hopefully, they'll either, as my dad used to say, be cured or die. One of the two.
Yeah, well, and sadly, I predicted about a year ago that this is probably where we were going to be anyway. That as we go through this, the unfortunate reality is we're not going to do the Winston Churchill quote. We do the right thing after doing everything else first.
I know, it's a shame. All right, well, you have a nice evening.
Thank you. You as well. Appreciate the call, Alice. No, I mean, this is one of those weird kind of moments where we know what has to be done. And yet you've got a governor, and this is the part that gets me. I look at Texas as one of these places where you go, so, okay, you got what you wanted. You literally got what you wanted. No mask mandates, no vaccine mandates, none of that stuff. You got what you wanted. And now that you got what everyone knew was going to happen, now it's, oh, please help. Now it's, oh, please do something. It's, oh, please now. Do something now. And again, I go back to what, with my kids, when you screw up, there are consequences. And the weird thing is, and this is the sad thing, if it were just him, I would be like, no, you're on your own, But there are thousands of people who are going to be affected by this who had no say in this. And this is the problem that I have with this whole thing. It's frightening on just a bunch of levels. And finally, some interesting news, and I guess thank goodness. The child tax credit, that has come to an end just in time for the surge to have happened, and for potentially more talks of separating and staying away from each other. Yeah, good policy all around. Anyway, if you've got any thoughts, any questions, comments, love to hear it. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Love to hear your thoughts, comments. I do answer, again, most emails personally. The stupid ones I generally just trash, as should happen. So before you go and you send them, think about that. They're just going to end up in the empty box. So there is that. When I come back, I'm going to talk with Dr. Joe Eastman. He's my go-to resident expert on everything COVID models. And here's the reality. He has been spot on almost at every turn. When he told me that we were going to see 3,000 people dying a day, I go, no way. It happened. When he said, hey, we're going to see this many cases happen, I was saying, no, that's extreme. And it did. He's spot on. Going to hear what he's got to say after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. That was the day local AFL and CIO unions in Stamford, Connecticut joined forces to bring out 20,000 members from 30 trade unions in a massive one-day general strike to support striking machinists at Yale and Town Lock. The machinists had been out on strike since November, demanding a 30% wage increase and a union shop. The combined Stamford labor organizations had promised action if Governor Raymond Baldwin did not withdraw state police from interfering with peaceful picketing. The state police were being used to attack the picket lines, arrest strikers, and escort scabs into the plant. In a last-minute attempt to avert the general strike, Yale and Town President W. Gibson Carey Jr. offered an 18% raise, but refused any talk of a closed shop. So the unions went on an extended lunch hour, effectively bringing the entire city to a standstill. Numerous small businesses closed their shops and joined in support. Marchers converged upon Town Hall from 5 directions. Their placards read, "Stamford is a union town. Let's keep it, and we will not yield victory." Workers represented unions like the Mine Mill, the American Federation of Musicians, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the Barbers Union, Bookbinders, Gas and Chemical, and United Steelworkers, among many others. World War II veterans carried a banner that read, "We licked the Axis, and we can beat Kerry." Despite public support, pitched battles continued on the picket lines. The company would not budge until April, when they finally accepted the proposal the machinists had demanded back in January. The machinists quickly ratified the contract. They beat back a union-busting offensive and built local solidarity among unions at a time when the AFL and CIO were very much at odds.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got to tell you, when you see this number, 380,000 plus new cases, 1,500 deaths over a 7-day period, you just got to go, how much worse is it going to get? How much bigger does this get? And well, is there another variant coming? Because clearly, we're not going to do the right things. And as I said, the person that I have looked to for my expertise on the modeling and what to expect, I've asked to come and share some thoughts on, what the next month, 2, 3 could possibly look like. That's why I've asked Dr. Joe Eastman to come talk with us. He is my modeling expert. Joe, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me on tonight, Rick. I look forward to it all day.
So, I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at how bad the numbers are. We're seeing an explosion here after the holidays. Very predictable. We're hearing reports from hospital systems across the country that, hey, we're full. Our ICU beds are full. How much worse does this get, Joe?
Yeah. I was just listening to your last segment when you were talking about over 200,000 cases. Today we hit 500,000, 500,000. Over the course of the next month, my model is telling me close to 20 million. Roughly 8% of the population will be walking around infectious at any given time. The other sad thing is, if the projections hold true, we're looking at crisis management mode in nearly half the hospitals across this country, which means they're going to take a look at people and say, well, I don't think you're going to survive. You're on your own, but this person looks like they will survive, so I'll take them in. That's kind of what we're facing if this continues like it is right now on this trajectory.
Yeah, and it's not something that we're used to in this country. I mean, over the weekend on our New York show, someone brought up the fact that we're not talking about building more facilities. And have there been new hospitals built? I mean, are we doing that? I mean, you were in the middle of a pandemic. Wouldn't you think, instead of just using a garage or, mobile trailers, that we'd actually be building infrastructure? This is one of those things that, I can't believe I didn't really think of it, but we're in this spot where, are we building new large-scale hospitals to help people through this time?
Unfortunately not. For the first wave, they started going down that path. But for instance, my state of Minnesota bought a large warehouse just for that purpose. They eventually sold it off. But as far as preparing for what is coming, we are doing a horrible job. I'll put it that way. You can call in National Guard, but you're starting to take resources away from other places and moving things around. It's just a game. We just don't have enough health professionals to deal with this right now.
Yeah, no, it's scary times now, especially for someone like you. I know that you're personally battling cancer. This is, you end up with this potentially. This is fatal for you, isn't it?
I got about a 1 in 8 chance of surviving if somebody brings home COVID to the house. My wife's an RN. I see this firsthand, what she goes through and the amount of stress that she's going through. And it makes life a little difficult, but I sit here and do the best I do to help people out and hopefully provide some information that will help us out of this.
Now, your information to me has been invaluable, but I look at this and I look at you, who, I consider a friend, and I go, just being a decent person seems to elude us in this moment. This idea that we would care about someone else, this idea that we're going to maybe be a little inconvenienced, maybe by wearing a mask or socially distancing or any of that, so that someone else won't get sick, seems to be a foreign concept today.
Yeah, unfortunately, it does. We've seen this coming for since 1980 when Reagan was elected. Sorry for the politics, but I have my oncologist used to work at Walter Reed. He was in charge of the oncology department, and he watched during the Reagan years and even during the Clinton years, they dismantled a lot of the infrastructure that was in place to deal with a coming pandemic down the pipeline. We knew this was coming. and unfortunately, we dropped the ball. One thing that people should know, if the government was really going to respond to this correctly, months ago, probably a year ago, they should have sent out like months supplies of N95 masks, because people, they put on their cloth mask or even the surgical mask and they think, oh boy, I'm protected now. No, you're not. You're looking at between 8% to 23%. It depends on your age. Old people don't breathe as hard, so they're better off. But that's all that mask protects you. If we went to full N95, we're getting up around 70%. And I just ran some simulations that showed if we did this, we're going to cut this caseload dramatically from what I think is coming down the pipeline in February.
So worst case scenario, what does February look like for us?
About 23 million people on any given day having this. There's going to be a peak, according to the model, about the middle of this month. And then, the news, mainstream media will jump on it as the peak dies down. And then all of a sudden February hits and all hell will break loose again. And then it's going to skyrocket. Fortunately, what my model is showing is by the end of May, we're kind of going to be out of the water. But who knows what variant's going to be next? We got to prepare better than we are right now.
Yeah. Now they're saying that this Omicron variant is not as deadly as the Delta or the original. Do you find that to be accurate? Does that play out in your model as well, that while more people are going to get sick, that fewer people will actually die from it?
Yeah, I track the Omicron and the Delta separately. The Omicron is about an order of magnitude less death, but when you start getting up around 23 million cases, just sheer numbers take over. One other thing that people don't know about and hasn't been put out there in the news that much is the rate growing in people 18 and under is incredible compared to the rest of the population. We need to get the kiddos vaccinated.
Well, they're the ones who, they're least likely to be the ones dying, but yet I'm reading stories that are saying that, their infection rates, as you pointed out, are going through the roof, and their numbers are getting worse of people passing away. In fact, there was an Indiana group, insurance company, that said, the 18 to the 64 group, their death rates are something like 10 times what it had been, just before the pandemic. And they were saying, that this is unheard of, and just how extreme it is for that age bracket to see the kind of deaths that we're seeing in that age bracket.
Yeah, and then again, at the same time, we're sending them back to schools. A lot of parents are sending their kids to schools that are even infected. It's insanity out there right now, and there's so many pieces of information floating around there that it's hard for the average American to get a really good grasp on exactly what's going on. And then you have a CDC that is sometimes disjointed, and they're not all on the same page. And my main message is we need to get on the same page. Let Americans know the truth. This is coming. I know they see these numbers coming. Any person with any modeling experience knows what is coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, I think their mindset is that it's not going to be as deadly. Yeah, more people, just like the flu, people are going to get it, and that maybe this is the future. That's the message that I keep hearing from people. That, oh, Rick, you're being overly cautious, and I am a little overly cautious because look, I know people who, like you, if you get it, your chances are you're gonna have a very negative outcome, and I respect others in a way that I want to make sure that they're okay as well. While I may get through it, someone that I pass it on to may not.
That's precisely true, and why not err on the side of caution?
Because look, I hate wearing the damn mask as much as anybody.
Yeah. Hopefully it's an N95, Rick.
No, I can't. No, I've got the surgical masks. I got a box of them. I bought those, and look, maybe we should all get them. And do you know of any movement to find those? Because look, all I keep seeing are the cheap Chinese knockoffs. I haven't found an actual N95 mask anywhere. I can find the KN95 ones, which from what I understand are garbage. But I haven't found the American-made ones, if there are any more left.
Maybe I shouldn't say this. I got a wife that's an RN, so I have a pretty efficient mask that
there you go.
I like to use.
Well, look, you need it. You absolutely need it. In fact, we should be making sure that everyone who's in a position like you are has the things that they need. To me, that's simple. But Joe, I appreciate the thoughts. I appreciate the work, and I appreciate you continuing to keep me updated on the models and how things are playing out.
Thanks a lot, brother.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Joe. No, I mean, look, at the end of this, as we were saying, for me, it comes down to just being a decent person, making sure that the folks that I'm around, I have some respect for. We're in this weird world where hooray for me and the heck with everybody else seems to be the heart of all of it. But again, Joe's my guy. So if he's telling me that these are the numbers, he has not been wrong since. And look, I go back to what's going on in Ohio. The fact that their hospitals are filling up, almost full. In fact, you had the Republican governor, with a doctor saying, "Look, this is serious. We have the highest per capita in the country. They've deployed more than 2,200 National Guard members to go into these hospitals and to help because things have gotten bad." And this is, again, had you, I don't know, done the right thing from the start, maybe we wouldn't be in this train wreck moment. Maybe we wouldn't be where we are. Just my thoughts. Anyway, as I said at the beginning, the child tax credit ended on December 15th. There will be no money for January, and I don't see a path for that to happen here anytime soon. There is talk of the Build Back Better plan coming back. I'm a big proponent of the $250 per kid. Having seen what it did for childhood poverty, I'm a big proponent. Something we should be really pushing forward on. And this is where the Build Back Better plan has to come back. Now, the weird thing for me is I go back to Joe Manchin, the senator from West Virginia, being the guy who basically killed the tax credit under the guise of, well, they're just going to use it for drugs. They're just going to use it to, for other stuff. When the studies have already been done, we've done the research on this. We know what people use this money for. Put food on the table, pay bills, take care of their children. It isn't that difficult. It really isn't that difficult to see. And in one of the poorest states in the country, like West Virginia, I'm not getting where he's at on this. But here's the thing. If something doesn't happen on the Build Back Better plan, if something doesn't get moved, I think Democrats are going to have a hard time next election season, because everyone's already forgotten about the rescue plan money. I'm hoping that the infrastructure bill that starts being rolled out and people will maybe see some of that. But ultimately, what you've got a Republican Party who's hoping and planning that none of that's going to matter to you, and none of that's going to matter to voters. That they're going to focus on the culture war stuff. They're going to focus on, well, ripping us apart. Divide, conquer. And one of those areas, as I said, education being a big part of this. Education being something that a battleground like we saw in Virginia, in Ohio. And I don't know why Ohio seems to be the state where lots of bad ideas are percolating. Is Ohio the new Florida? Am I missing something? But evidently, this Republican representative. His name is Brett Hilaire. But Brett has decided that he wants a piece of legislation to make education more transparent. He says that we can all agree that transparency is a good thing. He wants every teacher to put their syllabus online for everyone to see, all of the books, all the materials, all the articles, all the videos, their entire curriculum. He wants posted online. And this is one of those moments where I'm kind of in this weird spot because I'm someone who completely believes in transparency, 110%. And what I know is where my kids go to school, all that stuff is online. All the teachers have websites with all the assignments. We basically know what's going on and show up for the parent-teacher conferences and do all of that stuff. I'm looking at this guy's piece of legislation, and while I haven't seen all of it, I've only seen the reports on it. The idea that we're going to plaster the curriculum on a website so that everyone can see it kind of makes me go, I don't really think this is about the parents. I think this is about right-wing trolls being able to attack public education and, more importantly, attacking individual educators. That's what this is about. It's not about transparency of curriculum because parents already have that. It's already there. And when I put this out on Twitter, a lot of people are going, yeah, you're exactly right. It's all there. You just have to look for it. You just have to ask. Oh, that's right. You have to ask for it. You can call your teacher. And that's the weird thing that, guys like this again just seems political to me and not about actual transparency and about actually getting things done. It's very, 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 very Republican because they're looking for that next issue in 2022, like they saw in Virginia, to get people all outraged because they got to feed the outrage candy. The only way you can keep people voting against their own economic interests is to get them angry about everything else so that you can keep pilfering and keep stealing from them. And boy, are they good at that. Anyway, if you missed any of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com. Highly suggest doing that. You got a question, comment, something on your mind, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend Bob Ney is going to be here to share some thoughts on what's going on in Congress. Stick around. Right back after this.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1917. That was the day the trial against labor leader Tom Mooney began. Mooney stood accused of detonating a bomb at the Preparedness Day parade in San Francisco on July 22, 1916. The military parade was meant to demonstrate U.S. preparedness to enter World War I. Many labor leaders objected to the idea of the United States becoming involved in the war. The bomb in San Francisco killed 10 spectators and injured 40 others. District Attorney Charles Fickert soon charged Mooney, his wife Rena, and his assistant Warren Billing with the crime. Mooney, born in Chicago, was the son of a coal miner. He became an iron molder at the age of 14, where he joined the Union. Known for his socialist politics, Mooney was involved in a long, bitter strike against the Pacific Gas and Electric Company in 1913 that spanned well into 1914. He was accused of trying to use dynamite during that strike, but was acquitted. After the explosion at the San Francisco parade, Martin Swanson, a private detective with the Pacific Gas and Electric Company, pointed the district attorney toward Mooney. There was no evidence tying Billings or Mooney to the explosion. During the trial, some who testified against Mooney even admitted to committing perjury on the stand. Despite all of this, the men were convicted. Billings received life in prison, while Mooney was sentenced to hang. The trial garnered international outrage. President Woodrow Wilson set up a commission to study the case. Mooney's sentence was commuted to life in prison. For 2 decades, a fight was waged to release Mooney. Finally, the evidence of false testimony piled so high it could not be ignored. And in 1939, Billings and Mooney were released from prison. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it looks like Devin Nunes, his cow and his mother are all out of Congress. Evidently, the California congressman has resigned from his position as a congressman and is now, and this is the great part of this, this is the part that just makes me laugh, he is now going to be the head of Trump's new media and technology company. And I see that and I go, boy, you know, he's going to be really surprised. He's going to be shocked when the check bounces and the company goes bankrupt. But hey, you know, all I can say is good. Bye. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the resignation of Devin Nunes, as my friend calls him, the Kremlin gremlin. I've asked our good friend, former Ohio Congressman Bob Ney, to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us. Do I not have Bob here?
Hello?
Bob, how are you, man?
I'm okay. How are you?
Oh, I can't complain. So what do you think? What do you think of Nunes and the resignation?
I was a little surprised only because Ricky was going to become chair of the Ways and Means Committee. That's, you know, that and appropriations are at the top of the food chain in Congress. And, well, he was going to become, you're going to get some nasty emails. He was going to become the ranking member of the Ways and Means Committee. If the House shifted, he would become chair of the Ways and Means Committee. So either way, he was going to have a great position. So it surprised me a little bit. I guess number two also, he's going to make some money. I understand that. But wouldn't you be leery of the history of Trump getting rid of people?
Oh, my God, yes. I mean, you know, the fact that,
the most
you know,
in the country's history.
I mean, I think of Trump vodka. I think of Trump steaks. I think of Trump Air. I think of Trump University. I think of the 3 casinos that went bankrupt. I think of the hundreds of stories I heard in 2015 of people who had done work for him that he stiffed and sued. I think of all these people who got the short end of the stick, and I'm going, there is no way I'm going to work for Trump unless it's upfront money. And that was one of the questions I wanted to know. Is all of this front-end loaded money?
I don't think so. I don't think they would do a upfront money deal. I mean, he's going to get a commitment, you know, to be paid, obviously, a lot of money. There's no question about that. But I don't think it'll be any upfront money.
Yeah.
Trump hasn't ever tended to operate that way. You know, you come into the Trump organization, if you do good, then there's the pay and then bonuses, et cetera, you know, that would be involved. But even beyond the fact of whether this makes or not, let's say that this makes it, and Trump gets donations and it gets on its feet. All he has to do, Nunes, is do something wrong, just anything, and he could be out.
Yep.
Period. Even if the place is running okay. It's an unstable position.
No, I
ask 25 previous people that we could name that went into the White House.
There's just no way I see that being a smart move.
No.
But at the end of the day, all I can say is, good, bye.
No, it wasn't. Like I said, he was going to be either the ranking member or chair of a very powerful committee that you can do a lot of good things. You know, you can do a lot of good things for the district. You be a national player. But obviously, you know, according to his release, he wanted to do something, quote, bigger, which he believes this is going to be.
Well,
I wouldn't want to be in the middle of that whole firestorm. Maybe he doesn't care.
I'm waiting for the story of him whining that he got stiffed, and that that's coming. But hey, you know, good times ahead. I loved Kevin McCarthy's. I wanted to get your thoughts on McCarthy's comments that the January 6th probe hasn't answered the central question of how the Capitol was left so unprepared. This is Kevin McCarthy asking this. I'm kind of going, you know, you should know that already, shouldn't you?
Well, sure he could. Something that has, since this happened, has bothered me. And I would like to know, you know, the complete insides of all of this. I know when I chaired House Administration, and my first ranking member was Steny Hoyer. When we had the plane headed to the Capitol, and of course the 9/11 attacks on New York and and the Pentagon, we formed a committee because of the fact that we would be under a lot of threats, and the fact that we had a threat that had existed, and then anthrax came in. So we worked closely with Hoyer, but also directly with Pelosi. There wasn't anything that we were doing that Nancy Pelosi, as minority member, didn't know. Now, let's hypothetically say that House Administration, which is chaired by Zoe Lofgren, and then there's a ranking Republican member, Rodney Davis. Let's say that they weren't informing Zoe Lofgren of California, and let's hypothetically say she's not informing them of something going on internally. That's literally impossible, because at any point in time, the ranking member of House Administration can call the Sergeant of Arms, can call the Capitol Hill Chief of Police, can call the NSA, the CIA, whoever they want to call. They've got the ability to do it. So how he didn't know, how any of them didn't know whether we were prepared or not, there's some internal mistakes to that, potentially, that they'll try to correct. But, Rick, it's virtually impossible that he was out on the sidelines.
No.
Impossible.
No,
it doesn't run that way. I was there. I was, in charge of the committee that oversaw the House.
But this is one of those things that they keep throwing out there as a diversion, because most people don't know how the House runs. They just know that Nancy Pelosi was in charge, so this is all Nancy Pelosi's fault. And that's really what they're trying to do here. They're really trying to say the reason that the National Guard wasn't called out, the reason the Capitol Police were underprepared, the reason all of this stuff, it's all Nancy Pelosi's fault. That's really what they're doing.
When the way the structure runs, when Speaker Hauser was there, and I served in that position, which is now Nancy Pelosi and Zoe Lofgren, the Congresswoman from California. When those committees are established to operate the House, again, the ranking member, which at that time was Hoyer, and then at another point in time John Larson, those ranking members have every ability to pick up that phone, and believe me, because they are the ranking member of that committee, which is only 9 people appointed by the Speaker and a minority leader, the Capitol Hill police system will immediately respond to them. So all of this is a smokescreen. If anything, they would all be, quote, guilty of, maybe not being prepared together in the system, but nobody can say, well, Pelosi just ignored everything. Again, I know that committee quite well, and I sat on it from 2001 to 2006 and chaired it, and it simply doesn't operate that way. And every time I see these stories, I'd like to be a reporter in that room to ask some specific questions of McCarthy. Where was your ranking member? Why can't you, as the minority leader, pick up the phone and call the Sergeant at Arms? Wouldn't they respond to you? Of course they would. Absolutely.
Yeah, again, but what it's really all about is just making sure that there's a diversion, and that, to me, at least that's my view on it.
Well, I'm surprised they didn't try to do it earlier on. First, they were arguing, was there an insurrection or not? Were these just tourists? I mean, that now towards the end, then they said, wow, obviously there was some lack of preparation. That is a fact. There was some lack of preparation. The chief of police has been dismissed. The sergeant of arms have changed. But the bottom line remains that in the positions of power of the minority leader and the ranking member of House Administration, at any point in time, they were briefed, could be briefed, and both cases were knowledgeable about what exactly was going on. And I don't know why the Democrat side doesn't call them out on it.
I don't either. I don't know why there isn't.
I don't understand it.
They're just, I guess they've got their path, and they're rolling it out as slowly as possible.
Right.
Because you and I agree, this should have been started the next day. I argue that 5 minutes after the vote was certified, they should have been putting things together.
Right, and obviously you have an idea at that point in time who's doing what, and that's when the subpoenas would go out. And they would try to get the process moving earlier.
Let's move along. Evidently, former Congressman Fortenberry, Jeff Fortenberry, the federal judge, has rejected his his seeking to dismiss the 9. I go with how many counts are against him? 5.
I think
but they're
5 or 6 remaining.
He's still moving along the process.
Well, he's the judge, in this particular case, I don't think that the judge is going to entertain any of the motions or any other part of the court system, because this is a case. It has a lead prosecutor, and he denied all of them. The judge did. It was 5. I think 5 of the reasons that this should be dismissed.
Yeah, he had 5 motions. Yeah.
Yeah, 5 motions of why it should be dismissed, and the judge threw all of them out. So it's going to move into a trying of the case in Los Angeles is where it's going to end up, and that's what is going to happen. You can do a lot of things, but you have to be very careful. Believe me, speaking from personal experience,
yeah.
I was never charged with lying. You have to be careful, and you can have little details that you vary on, and that can be construed if the government wants. And sometimes they go overboard. That can be construed as lying. In this case, it's a little different. They have proof that he was told the contribution was illegal, which at that point in time, of course, Rick, as you know, he could have said, oops, that was illegal, cut a check and send it back.
And be done with it, yep.
And it would have been over with. Instead, he lied to the DOJ, Department of Justice. That is now going to give them the ability to have counts against him, including obstruction of justice.
No, I hope the process goes along. I hope he is tried, and if he was guilty, he's convicted. And I hope they find a nice room for him somewhere with a pinstripe outfit.
They're out there.
Yeah, good luck for him. I wanted to get your thoughts also on the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene had her Twitter account suspended, and also I guess Facebook has suspended her as well. Are you comfortable with silencing? Now Twitter did not silence her congressional account. It was her personal account. But thoughts?
I'm torn on this in a sense. She reposted articles, which I don't think what she did was very good or appropriate. She reposted articles about vaccinations and COVID that were deemed to be false. And I know on Facebook, friends have posted certain things. Facebook comes up and warns you. I'm not sure that. I don't know. Don't they have a 3-time rule and then you are banned permanently?
Yeah, evidently she got 5.
She had 5-time rule.
Yeah.
And I would assume that maybe a 6-month ban or something. The permanent ban bothers me a bit, and it's nothing to do with her. I think she's out to lunch.
Yeah, see, I'm personally against the idea of banning people as a whole. I get the little timeouts, but the permanent ban stuff. I don't know. I'm still a freedom of speech guy. I believe that good speech should outweigh bad speech. The problem is on social media, you got nothing but trolls.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And like I said, it bothers me, the permanent part of it. Maybe, I don't know, 6 months, 3 months. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the permanent part of it does bother me. I mean, that's a forever process, and maybe she would come back and do something different. I highly doubt it, but maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real quick.
Permanent banning gets me on who, no matter who it is.
Real quick, I wanted to get your thoughts on Donald Trump endorsing the authoritarian leader of Hungary, this Viktor Orban, I guess his name is.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts on that, or do we care?
I don't particularly care, about what he's doing, but I don't know. I'm trying to think. He's Hungary's far right prime minister. I'm just wondering if that counts over there.
Yeah.
I
know it doesn't count here, but it
it doesn't.
It just shows that where he leans.
Well, now that's the point of the story. If you look at Orban's history in Hungary, and I have some friends who are from Hungary, and actually we're talking about him a couple of weeks ago. He has rewritten the election laws. It favors his party. He changed textbooks all kinds of curbing of the press, all over the place. And I think he overhauled parts of the Constitution of the country. So, I mean, he's like the guy you really kind of don't want to endorse. It's okay to be to the right, but when you're banning textbooks and elections,
Bob, it's what they're doing.
then it's a problem. So, I mean, I wouldn't personally want to be associated with him. I guess Trump doesn't care.
Yeah.
Maybe Trump likes it, the fact that the guy wanted his endorsement. They probably talked before him.
Yeah, that's...
Again, I don't know what that will do for him over in Hungary.
Yeah, weird times. Maybe a hotel. Maybe a hotel deal's on the horizon.
There you go. Maybe there is something behind it. Yes, that actually you've got a good point.
Or maybe that's going to be where they base the new media company out of.
Nunez is going to move to Hungary.
There you go. Bob, I appreciate the time as always. Great stuff.
Thank you, Rick.
Our good friend Bob Ney. No, seriously, I look at this and I'm going, why is this even news? Why do we care if the former guy is endorsing an authoritarian leader from Hungary? And then you go, well, wait a second. Like Bob said, this is a guy who's done a whole bunch of things on election to curb the number of people who can vote. They're rewriting textbooks. They're rewriting their constitution. Seems right in line with what the current Republican Party wants to do today. Seems right in line with the authoritarian thinking of this day and age. So I guess it is the perfect endorsement. It is the perfect, I guess it is the perfect story. And especially on the day when President Biden spoke with the head of Ukraine. And I'll tell you what's not going to happen tomorrow. Biden's not going to get impeached over what happened with his conversation with Zelensky in the Ukraine. Just saying. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you follow us on social media at Rick Smith Show. On Facebook, give us a like there. Also on YouTube, follow and subscribe and all of that. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. This date in 1931 was a day that helped to bring the hunger and poverty caused by the Great Depression to the attention of the nation. 500 farmers, black and white, marched on England, Arkansas to demand food for their starving families. A severe drought had destroyed crops in the region, already hit hard by the downturn in the national economy. The march became known as the England Food Riot, even though there were no actual acts of violence during the march by the farmers. Store owners in the town gave some food to the protesters, but real help came when the national media picked up the story. People across the nation read about the farmers in Arkansas and saw pictures of their hunger. They sent help. The story also caught the attention of the famous cowboy and humorist Will Rogers. Rogers had a very popular syndicated newspaper column. He used his column to bring attention to what was happening in Arkansas. Rogers wrote, "You let this country get hungry, and they are going to eat. No matter what happens to budgets, income taxes, or Wall Street values, Washington mustn't forget who rules when it comes to a showdown." Rogers also went on tour to raise funds for drought relief for farmers in the region. One person who was not swayed by the pictures of hungry farmers and their families was United States President Herbert Hoover. President Hoover refused to have the federal government lend aid to the farmers. His refusal to mobilize federal resources to combat the Great Depression helped Franklin Delano Roosevelt win election the following year. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.